Welcome to the Organisational Inclusionist. I'm your host, Grace Mosuro. In this podcast series, we'll be delving deep into the pressing issues surrounding equality, diversity, and inclusion in both the workplace and the broader world. My goal is to foster understanding, inspire change, and amplify the voices of those advocating for a more inclusive and equitable society. Throughout this series, I'll be engaging in candid discussions with leaders, experts, activists, and changemakers from various fields. We'll explore the challenges, successes, and evolving landscapes of equality, diversity, and inclusion. From dismantling systematic biases to promoting equal opportunities for all, we'll touch on a broad range of topics. But we won't stop at discussing problems. We'll actively seek out solutions and actionable steps to drive positive change. Our aim is to inspire and empower you, our listeners, to take an active role in making the world a better place for everyone. This is the Organisational Inclusionist. Let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the Organisational Inclusionist. My name is Grace Mosuro, and today I am joined by Dianne Greyson, the Non-Exec Director of Spktral, Director of Equilibrium Consulting, Managing Partner of Synergised Solutions, founder of the Ethnicity Pay Gap report. Dianne, a massive thank you for joining me today. I'm really honoured to have you. I met you recently I say recently, oh my gosh, the time is flying. I met you was it February?
It was February the 9th.
At the Ethnicity Pay Gap Summit, which was amazing, but we're going to talk a lot more about that shortly. But I had to have you on because I think the Ethnicity Pay Gap report is something that not enough people know about, and we need a lot more people to know about it and to appreciate why we need it. So I'm really happy that you've joined me today. So thank you so much. I'd like to hand over to you now just to kind of give our listeners a bit of an intro into Dianne Greyson and the work that you do.
Sure. Well, hopefully I will not waffle. So basically, I'm the founder of the Ethnicity Pay Gap campaign, which has been going since 2018. And its sole purpose is to make sure that the disparities that are happening in pay with regards to Black, Asian and other ethnic minorities versus their white colleagues are closed. Because it's quite clear to me that there is a major issue, although it's not evidenced in the press or anywhere else, there is a major issue occurring regarding our pay versus those of our white colleagues. And going even deeper than that, there is still a disparity of pay when it comes to Black people. For example, me as a Caribbean heritage person, I will probably get paid less than somebody who's got an African heritage person. So it's not just black and white. There are a lot of layers which people don't only recognise. And again, that is because of what the media is putting out there rather versus what the reality of it is. I started Ethnicity Pay Gap Day 2021. The sole purpose of that was to put some visibility on the ethnicity pay gap because not enough people were speaking about it. It was all very much gender. And I just felt that there was a need to make sure that the ethnicity pay gap was seen and people can start talking about it. So that's why I started that up. And in 2022, myself and my fellow colleague, Susan Baker, because I've got to shout her out, who is my fellow researcher, we did a research report on the impact of the ethnicity pay gap on Black women. And the reason why I did that is that all the reports that you see on the ethnicity pay gap is quite homogenous. You don't really know what's going on. So I just wanted to know what did it look like for me and people like me. So that's why I did that. And that's me in a nutshell.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So obviously, like you said, you became aware of the discrepancies in the pay gap, but you know, a lot of the time, particularly as women, as Black women, we know there's a problem, but we don't necessarily know what to do about it, or we don't feel confident enough to speak up about it. What really tipped you over the edge? What compelled you to say, no, actually, I'm going to do something about this?
It was ironically, it was a LinkedIn discussion I was having. So somebody had written about it, and I basically voiced my displeasure about it, and a couple of us were talking about it. And I actually have to say, it wasn't just displeasure. I was quite angry.
Yeah.
Because to me, it was just another level of discrimination. And I just thought, for God's sake, why can't we be treated fairly? I just don't get it. I just don't understand it. So I became angry about it, and and rather than just be angry and say, oh, this is not fair, this is not fair, I just felt I needed to do something about it. So that was my purpose, for want of a term. I just felt I needed to do something. So I just thought, right, I will think about what exactly it was I wanted to do. And I try not to make this sound too long, but I basically created a T-shirt in solidarity, just to say, so I could show people, look, ethnicity pay gap exists. And literally, my colleagues who are on LinkedIn would say, oh, where did you buy that? And I said, oh, I created it. So I ended up creating more of them. And through that, people started buying it. And whilst all that was going on, I was writing about it, and it just gathered pace, and it naturally became a campaign. That's not how, I didn't have a clear vision of what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to do something, and that's how it ended up. It just spiraled into this campaign, and I think it's because of the passion of it. And one of the key things that really put me over the edge was when I read in the Guardian article in 2018 that there was a £3.2 billion ethnicity pay gap in the UK. And I literally hyperventilated. That's how angry I was and upset I was. And from that point, it was like, that's it. I'm going for this, and I'm going to make sure I'm going to make a difference.
No, I love that. And I think, it's just, as Black women, obviously we usually avoid using the word angry because of the angry Black woman connotation.
Exactly.
But I think it's so important to acknowledge that it's okay to feel angry, because actually it's what we then do with that anger and what we create from it. So I love that you said that and shared that. What have been some of the bumps on the road for you in terms of, the campaign and growing that and really making people more aware?
Well, I think the bumps don't low, as you had put previously. It was to do with dealing with the government, I think, because clearly they know this is an issue, but I feel that they keep wanting to bury it, which is a bit frustrating. And also the lack of engagement. So I've, not I, but the campaign's been going for 6 years, and I feel it should be at a higher level than it is. And that could be due to the fact that not obviously because I've not said this yet, but the Ethnicity Pay Gap campaign is run by me. I don't have 5 people or 10 people behind me. So there's only so much one person can do.
Yeah.
So it's not getting the exposure. I try to make the exposure as much as possible. Whereas, other things like, for example, gender pay gap, there's lots behind it. And it frustrates me that we are not at that position where people are pushing to get the ethnicity pay gap mandatory, and not just mandatory, to make sure it's closed.
Yeah.
So that I would say are my probably 2 bugbears.
What have been some of the highs over the last 6 years for you?
I would say my 2 big highs have been doing the research. That was fantastic. And the other research is actually a very close friend of mine. So it was really wonderful to do that together, 2 Black sisters working together on a common goal. That was fantastic. And the results, and the fact that Lord Boateng wrote the forward on it was amazing. So that was great. And the second one would be the Ethnicity Pay Gap Summit, which you attended, which was an idea that I was permeating over a year, and having had people, I spoke to people about it, and they were like, yeah, you should do that. And I literally had a clear vision. I knew what I wanted, and I would say 95% of what my vision was came to pass. A few bits went around down the wayside because that's the way it had to be, but it was amazing, and it was actually better than I ever thought it was going to be.
Dianne, I've already said this to you. It was the best all-day conference I've ever been to in my life. No lie.
Wow.
And it was on a Friday. We talked about this already.
Yes.
No one wants to go to an all-day conference on Friday. But I literally entered that session excited. I was a little bit late as well, so I was like a little bit of a disturbance. But I entered feeling like excited. I don't know what this is going to be, you know. I left there feeling more excited than I was when I got there. And it was
Wow.
just, it was phenomenal. The variety of people you had in the room, the variety of the speakers, the way that you set the day up, like it was just fantastic. So just massive kudos to you and everyone that was involved in organising that, because it was outstanding. I will be there next year. And for anyone
Thank you.
listening, well, by God's grace, you're going to do one next year. I'm
We are. It's in the planning.
going to be there. And for anyone listening, you need to be at the Ethnicity Pay Gap 2025 Summit, because it is going to be phenomenal. Like, it's something that everyone needs to be. And if you don't know what the Ethnicity Pay Gap is about, even though we've kind of given you a bit of an intro, get there. Like, you will 100% leave that session feeling inspired to effect change in any way that you can. And I think that's why it's so important that you're doing the work that you do.
Mm.
You mentioned that one of the lows is kind of the lack of urgency from government, or the lack of, you know, recognition by government. Why do you think that is?
I think because it's low on the pecking order. It's not important to them, because they think, you know, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
What are they going to gain? But they, you know, they've totally lost sight of the fact that, you know, people's lives are being affected by this. And if businesses do not make all efforts to close the gap, they're going to have a lot of people walking out of their offices, because they'll think, well, you know, you're clearly not paying me what you should be paying me. I'm off, you know.
Yeah.
And I think, although government says that, you know, they care about what business thinks, business is saying, or many businesses are saying, that the ethnicity pay gap should be made mandatory, yet they're not listening to them,
Yeah.
and they're not listening to the people. So clearly, they've got their own agenda.
And I think, you know, we all know how important it is to get paid, and to get paid well. You know, the impact that has on people's lives, on their ability to buy homes, on their ability to, you know, contribute to the GDP, etc. You know, paying people fairly is powerful. And I think, you know, one of the things that frustrates me, I talk a lot about this in my inclusion work, is that I regularly have to sell the business case to organizations, the business case
Exactly.
for inclusion. And I feel like we have to do that with government as well when it comes to the ethnicity pay gap, which is so unfortunate, because it's obvious, you know, people need
Totally.
the right money. So just
Yeah.
get it for them, you know?
And it's quite interesting. One would argue that if they realise that they themselves are not being paid fairly, what would they do about it?
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
would they sit there and go, oh, it's okay, don't worry? No, they would be furious, like we are furious.
Exactly. Exactly. So since setting up the campaign, what change have you seen so far?
I would say there's been more engagement with organisations, but what I would also say, not enough engagement, because clearly we should be in a position where the ethnicity pay gap doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So there is so much more that needs to be done. So I think there's also a bit in there making people aware, that this is an issue. Because I've said quite a few times that if we went outside in the street and asked people what ethnicity pay gap is, they'd say sorry. If you ask them what the gender pay gap is, they'll say, oh, well, that's the difference between what women
Yeah.
get paid and what men get paid. So there's an educational piece that needs to happen. And one of the things that I try to do is give them that education, particularly organisations. I go in and I talk to them about the evidence that is out there, you know, what people are saying, what research is saying about it. And also, not only that, I give them what the impact is. What's the impact of that on the people? So they get the point, like, you know what, actually, I didn't think about it that way. You're right. I think we need to be having those discussions to move forward. But I think there needs to be a bit more improvement in what's going on, and also be mindful of how you are actually analysing the data. because as I said in the beginning, it's not just white against black and Asian. There are many, many, many layers.
Yeah.
And if you're going to do your data analysis on black and white, that is not going to help you.
Mm.
You really have to segment it and recognize. And also, one of the key things I've been talking about more often now is about representation. You know, where are the people? Where are they in your organisation? And
Yeah.
in fact, Grace, I actually wrote an article and posted it today about that, and I called it ethnicity pay disparity. So where is the disparity? Where is it happening? So if you recognise there is that disparity, you can then work on it rather than just pick out figures from what your database tells you. Who's told you what race they are, and this is what the answer is. The probability is that you're not going to get the right answer.
Yeah.
So I think that is also an issue. There needs to be also the education around the data analysis of it. And as you said, I'm the non-exec director of Spktral, and that's one of the things that we are definitely championing, is making sure it's done correctly.
Absolutely. What would you say to organisations who either don't know about the Ethnicity Pay Gap report or who do know about it and want to report on it in some way? What advice would you give them?
Well, ones who probably don't have any interest in reporting, and there are many, is that if you're thinking that way, does that mean that you're also thinking that way about gender pay gap?
Mm.
Does that also make you think that you're not interested in fairness in your organisation? And I think they need to think about, if that's the message that you're sending, you've got to think about what type of people you've got in your organisation, and also are the people in your organisation going to stay with you? Because if you've got that type of attitude, I think the answer is no.
Mm.
So I think they need to really think about that. My advice for people who are starting out is always to make sure your communication is right. And actually, even I'll start off by saying, make sure you have communications, because there's a lot of organisations who are just busy doing all the data analysis and then go, ta-da, this is what the report says. And then your employers are going, what's that? And they're looking. That is not the way to do it. The way to do it is have a communication strategy, so you can say to your employees, this is what we're doing, this is the reason why we're doing it, and this is how we plan to go about it. We'd like for you to be part of this. We'll be sending that information, asking for your ethnicity to make sure that there are no disparities within our organisation, etc., etc. So that is key. And as I've said, it's about making sure you bring employees along. Think about like resource groups, staff networks, things like that. Get them part of that conversation, because they are the eyes and ears of the organisation. The Black Asian members of staff. So bring them in, have conversation with them. Those are quite key. I talked about the data prior. Think about how you're going to deliver that data, how you're going to analyse it, because it's not simplistic. And I think if you haven't got the skills internally, you need to look externally, because that investment is going to be a good investment for your future. Don't see it as, oh God, it's going to cost me X, Y, and Z. Let me just do it at the back of a fag packet. Don't do that. You've got to think about the long term of your employees and the long term of your business. So make sure you do that. And finally, once you have got the evidence, make sure you act on it. So make sure you plan something around it. So what is that data telling you? Does that mean that you need to look at your recruitment strategy? Does it mean that you need to look at how you're promoting people? There are going to be things that are going to come out of that, and make sure that if you can do it in-house, fine. Make sure you have a plan, do it with HR to make sure you can get that all worked out. If not, again, have an external party to help you to do that. But it has to be managed holistically. You can't just do one section. You have to do all of it.
Absolutely. And is that something that people can contact you about? So if they are like, no, we definitely want to do this, but we don't know how we'd get the data right, can they get in touch with you, Dianne, for advice?
Yes, for sure. I mean, I'm very much I'm the beginning and I'm also the end. I mean, although I'm the non-exec director of Spktral, who I would recommend, I am not the data expert.
Yeah.
They are there. But in terms of guidance, in terms of your first step, I'm happy to help and support on that side. And if you want organisations if you want to get to a point where you know what your analysis says and you can pinpoint with some support from me, or you recognise it already, but you need someone to help you to do it, again, I can help on that side too.
Amazing. And obviously with the gender pay gap report, we know that it's for organisations who are, I think they've got more than 250 staff, so they're
250, yeah.
legally required. But what is your expectation, or what are you hoping for with the ethnicity pay gap? Will there be a size of organisation, or is it just everyone that you're going to encourage to do this?
If the world was perfect, I would say 50 people, but that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. But I certainly think it could be less than 250.
Yeah.
I think so, because all things being equal, organisations, particularly I have to say London, because that's where I'm from, will have various ethnicities within its organisation. So when you hit 100, there's got to be a certain percentage that's going to be Black, Asian, or another ethnicity.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. So what would your call to action be for anyone listening to this episode?
Support the Ethnicity Pay Gap campaign, being one. Lobby your MP, because you could get your MPs to raise it in Parliament, and that gets
Amazing.
conversation. So that's quite an important thing. Ask questions in your organisation. Don't be afraid. I know it's a very difficult issue, but I think it's something that has to be addressed. And yes, people might feel uncomfortable, but they've got to recognise this is something that has to be done. It's not a nice thing to do. It has to be done. You should have been doing it. You shouldn't be in a position where there is an ethnicity pay gap anyway. And also discuss around community, because as I said, if you step outside, there aren't going to be many people who can say what the ethnicity pay gap is.
Yeah.
And I think we need to have conversations amongst our families, our friends, as many people as you can gather up and have these discussions, or work out how best to manage the processes for yourself, because it is challenging. I mean, on the Ethnicity Pay Gap campaign website, we do have steps in terms of how you can go about having that conversation within your organisations, because we recognised that everybody was supporting the company, but nobody was supporting the staff, which is absolutely crazy. So we created that, which we hope will help people.
Absolutely. Dianne, thank you so much. I just want to say a massive thank you for joining me today, but also obviously for the amazing work that you're doing with the Ethnicity Pay Gap. I feel like the work that you're doing is going to be your legacy, essentially, because I do see it affecting change. I'm praying that with the new government, we start to see this being mandated in some way.
Yes, well, apparently they've got it on the manifesto. So yes, and I've been watching that, and also been having some low-level conversations. So we'll see. I'm hoping. I don't want to say I'm hopeful, but I'm hoping that they will go forward with it.
I get that. Thank you so much. I know that our listeners will without a doubt get value from this. I don't think enough people know about the Ethnicity Pay Gap report and campaign. So I'm hoping a lot of people take that away from today and then go out with the call to actions that you've given today. Because I think, if enough people do more, we can really make some progress with this.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Pleasure.